Hello, and welcome to On the Irregular with Java Beret, a podcast where I chat to women from all walks of life about their own unique creative journey, how they got here, how their story has shaped their creative work, what they've learned, what has helped them, and where they plan to go from here. It's an irregular journey for so many of us, and I am delighted to offer a platform to share these fascinating stories and wells of wisdom. Today I'm talking to Cherelle, a multi-faceted creative dynamo. She is passionate about growing food, cooking food, styling, interiors, challenging herself to take on practical projects and setting the perfect scene to enjoy a feast of food and drink. Since finding each other on Instagram a few years ago, we bonded over bulk buying ingredients, the electric joy of a vintage bargain, and derelict buildings we want to convert. Today we chatted about Cherelle's creative journey, the career expectations set out for her by a career advisor as a young black woman, and how she's finding her way towards one of her creative goals. She has so many creative paths within her. I cannot wait for you to meet Cherelle. So what I'm really interested in is, you shared a bit about your background in your email, because I know you through your account on Instagram, which is very kind of focused on your house renovation, which is incredible and has been absolutely fascinating to watch, because you have that potent combination of style and interesting visuals with being incredibly practical, and it seems quite fearless as well about how you approach things, and and the conversations that we've had, we've often talking about our creative frustrations, and from what you've told me, you have had so many different little branches of what you focused on, and not just little, but like you said, you had a full-blown business the way you were doing tax returns, but you weren't allowing yourself or anyone else to take it seriously, possibly. So
yeah,
and you're talking now about where you're at work-wise. So I'm really interested in hearing about where how you got here, really, and your journey. And I think that's what this podcast is about just talking to different women who all have their completely unique background, to just share your experience, and I guess what's navigated your decisions and the choices that you've made, and the tools, I suppose, the tools that you've used emotionally and mentally to overcome maybe like mental barriers,
yeah.
things like that. So that's just, and we could go off on as many tangents as you like. I love a good tangent, honestly. So if you'd like to start, I'd really love to know a bit from the beginning. Tell me about where you're from, your family and your background.
Okay. Right. I always think like, oh, where to start? um. So it is such a weird journey, everything, because it's so all over the place, and I've done so many little things, and obviously I'm still going through it now. So it's not like oh, I started here and now I'm here and this is the end. It's kind of very much like this is just another start of something else that I'm doing right now. So yeah, so just to focus a bit on like where I'm at now, where I began. So I'm from Leicester originally. I currently live in Pendle, Lancashire. But I was just thinking about this more as I've been reflecting over the last like few weeks. But I've always been interested in creative things, practical things. I like doing things with my hands, and I like being able to make something. And my favorite things as kids was like I was obsessed with like Art Attack and things like that. Like I watched all the stuff like my mum used to watch as well, so I was obsessed with Changing Rooms. And now when I think when it was on, I was only like 8 or something when it was actually on, but I remember actively thinking that was one of like my TV shows, and I thought it wasn't aimed at me. But anyway, just like anything like that, I just really, really enjoyed. Just things that they were like really kind of starting with something and then creating something that seemed like magical.
So like transformation.
Yeah, like transformation type of things. And yeah, and I suppose I spent a lot of time as well. Anyone that knows my mum, she's very much a similar person, and she's a she's a get on with it person. She doesn't worry about things too much, and she just likes to like, she thinks, oh, might as well try it because, see what happens. Like, what's the worst that can happen, sort of thing. And growing up with someone like that and seeing your house, like our house was transformed all the time. My mum probably did different things to the living room and the bedrooms like every 3 to 4 months, it felt like sometimes.
Amazing.
I remember having like an Egyptian themed living room for a while. You could tell this is peak changing rooms because we had like do you remember like sponge effect painting?
Oh yes, my mum was big into sponge effect.
Yeah. So we had like yellow sponge effect walls, and she did this like border with like some kind of symbolism that gave you the idea of Egypt in some kind of way. And she had papyruses. I can't remember where she got them, where she found them, but she framed them and she put them all up on the wall. And we got these new creamy sofas. And I just remember all of this, and like, because my mum was always doing something, and we would help her out with it. So we were like stenciling the border around the dado rail in the living room.
So committed.
So committed, and that was always a woman. She was always just like, "Oh, we'll always try it." And I don't remember ever, unless it was something technical like to do with electrics or something like that. I don't remember her ever getting anyone in to help, or I just remember it being her that was doing it all the time. But so yeah, I've always kind of grown up very practical, and in school, I enjoyed like arts and textiles and DT, which was I think design technology, which stood for at the time. I chose those for GCSE. And they were always like, I just enjoy those more because I got on with school. It was fine, but I was always just like, I did enough to get by, and I never applied myself more because I just didn't really enjoy it. So English, science, maths, it was all fine, and I did enough. And I wouldn't necessarily struggled with it, but I couldn't really apply myself or enjoy it enough to kind of excel in any way. So I was always kind of like just average. But with things like doing the textiles and doing art, I really enjoyed it. And you just feel a complete difference, like in kind of the classroom environment and kind of the effort I would make after school as well. But I actively remember spending hours finishing off like textile project, like making a skirt and taking photos on a disposable camera in the kitchen, modelling it. But I don't remember doing any of my revision stuff like that after school. When you just think like, I don't know if I did do it, but it's just blocked out my memory because it's not things I particularly enjoyed, or if I just didn't do it because it's just not where I could focus.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was always one of those things that I just enjoyed doing. But when people would ask me what I wanted to do, I never knew how to answer. And even now, I don't think I know how to answer. Like, oh, what job do you want to do when you're older?
Yeah.
And it was always very influenced by what I thought you should do. And I think that happens a lot as kids, because obviously you don't really know what jobs are until you're having to apply for them. And people always advise you based on what their experience is or what they think is a good, safe job to do.
Yeah.
And because I'm also such a practical person, I do like the idea of doing safe things. Do you know what I mean? I do want to be able to think, okay, if I applied for this, I'll be able to get it. I'll be able to have a job that will be able to sustain me. I'll be able to have, have the home, be able to have food. I do like the idea of having that security in some way. So I might have thought about going to care in some way. Like my grandma was a midwife, and I had family that kind of worked in healthcare, and then pretty much everyone else worked in retail. And my mum, she worked, she was a community food worker for a while. It's the main job I remember when I was growing up. So that was, do you remember like the initiatives like Sure Start and things like that? There's some of them still around, but it's kind of like working with families, teaching families how to cook on a budget.
Way before Jamie Oliver was banging on about it.
Yeah, before that, and like kind of helping young families weaning and things like that. I think at the time, about, I'm talking nearly 20 years ago now, it was a big thing. They were talking about like five a day, 5 fruit and veg a day, and it was a massive thing about like teenage pregnancy. It was apparently like the only people having babies apparently at the time were like 15-year-olds, so we have to teach them how to wean babies. So yeah, but my mum worked a lot around that.
Okay.
And we grew up in an area that was an area that had a lot of community support because it's classed as a disadvantaged area, low income area, number of single parent families like ours. And we grew up in council housing as well. We were very lucky to have a community centre locally, literally like 5-10 minutes walk away where my mum worked, but also provided a lot of services.
And I can imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but in that environment, there it being actively encouraged to find a job that is that is secure and that will support you financially, and you're not gonna,
Exactly, yeah.
you're not taking risks, hand to mouth, which is often a creative careers are quite hand to mouth. It's like feast or famine. You have a job one day and then next month there's nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you definitely felt that that was the kind of advice at the time. And it wasn't necessarily like it wasn't an area where anyone expected you to like, oh well, you'll do this and then you'll go to uni and everything like that. That wasn't really spoke about, but it was just like, getting a good, decent, reliable job.
Mhm.
And it's only now I'm like reflecting on it and thinking about it. I suppose a lot of people have these conversations early on with their parents. It might be their mum or the dad saying like, oh, you need to just get a sensible job and do this. And
Yeah.
I don't think I ever had that conversation with my mum. She was never one to say, she was just like always like, well, what do you want to do, and just kind of do your best at it.
That's wonderful. I mean, it sounds like she has her own, like, her own creative force.
Yeah, and I only realise that now I'm older, how much that she must have had that, because most people's experience, and when I talk to my friends, it's very much like one of their parents were like, okay, you like this and that's nice, but really you should do this because it's a sensible thing to do.
Yeah.
And I just thought, actually I'm really lucky that I never had that pressure from my mum to say like, oh no, you should only do this sort of thing and this is the path that you should choose.
Mm.
But I suppose we've had other conversations around that. But yeah, just it's only something I've only just realised recently, and I thought, oh, it must be because my mum also had that other, like you said, that creative drive. So
Mm.
she probably acknowledged that in me, so was never going to kind of say, you know, do the sensible thing. She's always been the one to be very encouraging of
Yeah.
anything that I wanted to do. I'm probably more frustrated that I don't push myself more in it than than anyone else. But those conversations about doing something sensible and secure always seem to happen at school, or when you're talking to, like, I remember them bringing people in who would do like careers days, and you talk to people in different roles and they'll tell you about how they got their job and what they did. And I remember them doing classes like that, and we'd sit in a room and walk around, a bit like speed dating setup, and you go and talk to these different people, like, this is an accountant, this is a social worker, and things like that. And then we got to GCSE, and like I said, I had already chosen all my creative subjects, and there's just the other ones because I had to do them, but I wouldn't have if I didn't have to. There was, I forget what her role was now, but it was a teacher that kind of did things around like, oh, they might do subjects on sexual health,
Right.
careers. It's kind of all those things in school that are important, but they kind of just squeeze it into a 1 hour class a week because
Right.
they
Okay.
have to do it rather than. And so she did a lot on careers, and she was like the placement lead. So she was finding everyone in our year. So we're like, I think we were 15 at the time, go to work experience placements. And I just said to her, I don't mind what role I do, like, while I'm there, because it's only a 2 week placement. At the time, it seems like a massive deal, but really, what's 2 weeks?
Yeah. But when you're that age, everything is a massive deal and everything feels make or break.
It does. That's what it is. It feels really make or break. And I remember just saying, I just want anything in design. I didn't really know enough about what creative jobs look like yet, or how they're actually made, because we're talking, what, 2003? So the amount of information you can get now is amazing, and you can just see people doing their jobs now on like Instagram, so you know what jobs are, and you know all the layers of it. I had no idea in 2003 what I didn't even know what a creative was. I just thought, I want to do design in some capacity, so can I go to like some kind of studio, whether that be interiors or people that kind of make products. It's like anything kind of like design based is all I could like verbalize, sort of thing. And so you wait for a bit, you wait for a couple of weeks, and you're waiting to get your kind of placements back. And I think I made a couple of suggestions at the time for like local businesses, or kind of textiles place, because obviously Leicester is a massive textiles
course, yes.
hub as well. So I thought, oh, well, I'm bound to get something, even if I'm going to a factory that makes tights for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And it came back, and she came back, and everyone was getting their placements and stuff, and in different places. A lot of things kind of like typically office or retail based.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember her saying, oh, we haven't managed to get you a placement, like your preferred placement, I think she said. But if you talk to me after, I'll help you look at some of the options we have. So I remember going to her, I think it was during lunch, to go and look at like the options that we had left. And it was very much kind of like, I think there was like 3 choices, and 2 were like supermarkets, and then the other one was working in a cafe. And I was a bit like, but these are like nothing to do with anything that I suggested. And I was like, was there no like kind of other opportunities? And she was like, there was a few, but it's always very limited. It's a hard area to kind of get placements in, which I kind of understood.
Yeah.
But it was like, there was a few, but you know, they went to the people. And, you know, at the time you think, well, why did they have more priority over me? But you don't know. I have no idea how the logistics of it all works. But you feel really hard done to, because you're thinking, well, surely you know how much I wanted this, so why wouldn't I be able to have a chance? So I remember being really upset. So I was just really, I thought, oh, this is a chance to like find out more about what this kind of area could be like. And obviously she saw I was disappointed, and I just said, well, I need to do something, so I'll do the cafe placement.
Mm-hmm.
And then because she saw I was upset, she said afterwards, she was like, you know, design industry is really, really difficult. It's a really difficult career to do in the first place. You should consider other options. And she was like, you should consider like the services, because she was like, particularly fire service, so they're always looking for black women now. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I've never mentioned anything to do with like public service. It just seemed like so jarring compared to what we'd just been talking about.
A way to kill your dreams.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Because it's like, if it's not design, I'm talking about food. And do you know what I mean? Like, so I was just like, oh, okay, so this was like one of those, this is a sensible path for you thing. And I was just a bit, and it was the first time, like outside of the home and conversations I've had with like my mum or family or anything like that, where me being black had come into it, and someone saying like out loud, like, oh, well, things are really difficult, so if you want to make it easy for yourself as a black person, you should probably do this, because basically they're looking for more ethnic people.
I mean, that's so loaded.
Really loaded. And I was like, what a depressing, I was just like, what a depressing thing, even at 15, thinking like, I should have to go this route because I'm black. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was so just like, I couldn't like get my head around it. And like I said, this is years ago. So in 2003, you're just like, oh, okay, I'll consider that. And you walked out the door. I don't think 15-year-olds nowadays would just be so light about it if they had still had those conversations, which I'm sure we like to think they wouldn't happen. I'm sure they still do happen.
Because there's so much to process in that.
Because
so much.
you know, on one level, you're feeling really upset and hurt because you wanted a chance to explore more about design, and so that's, you know, that's being crushed, and
Yeah.
then being told, you know, it's a really different career and there are opportunities, but those opportunities weren't offered to you. And then, you know, maybe you need to be a bit more realistic about your dreams, and, you know, also the fact that you're a young black woman and those implications. There's just so fucking
So much.
much.
And you know what? It was a lot to take on, because even now, I still think about that conversation. I don't remember, I think I remember her name, but I don't quite remember her name. But I still remember exactly her, like her face, where we're sitting, where, you know, everything about it. And I must think about that at least once a month in some kind of fleeting way, just about how that conversation kind of has literally had a knock-on effect for like the rest of my career so far.
Yeah.
That idea about design industry being so difficult, which we're aware of in many ways,
Yeah.
but also about the side about the struggles that you may have as a black woman, and that you should maybe do a different path just to make it easier for yourself.
Yeah.
Or maybe easier for those industries not to have to like kind of make things more accessible for you. So yeah, it was those two things, like learning that at that age and kind of being, and like I said, having all that information to take on. But yeah, I'm still kind of dealing with it and understanding bits of it more and more now.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I would say that definitely had an influence. So like so I went and did the cafe placement, and actually it was really great. The woman was amazing. I learned so much about food, and I ended up getting a job there and carried on working there until I went to uni. She had a really good time there, and I realized actually I do love working with food as well, and like catering and that industry. And I just realized I was good at it. It's like very practical. So I learned a lot of skills from that, so which I do appreciate. But obviously on the other side, I was still thinking like, when I'm older, I would really like to have like some kind of design job. And what I realize now, what I really wanted, but I didn't know was a thing, or wasn't particularly, like you couldn't get courses on it at the time, but it was things that I was really inspired by, like set design and things like that. So you know, like you would have for TV, or be like I was obsessed with like kind of window displays and things like that.
I can really see that, just seeing your home, like seeing photos of your home and the way that you display things, and the way there's always like a touch and a flair of drama.
Do you think? I don't know, but yeah, I'm quite sure it's like noticeable. But yeah, it's like I love going to, you know, like the museums where they kind of recreate a house from like the 1970s. And I love those sort of things. So like when you go to museums, you go through a walkthrough, and it's all like, this is what it was like to be in the, you know, in the Blitz, and this is what have I was so obsessed with like how people can recreate something to kind of make you feel like you were there. At the time, it wasn't like a thing that was verbalized, and it would have been a very different way to access and get experience in that kind of area. So I didn't even know what I was looking for. But then it was so because of that, because I wasn't able to kind of put into words exactly what it was that I wanted to do, I didn't have the right kind of support and guidance to find it. I was very much getting the pressure of like, right, what do you do now? You've got to go to college, you've got to do this. And I wasn't enjoying doing my GCSEs. It's the first time I experienced having migraines through stress, and that was just GCSEs. Now I think, oh my god, give me GCSEs anytime. But at the time it felt like horrendous. And I was like, I can't do normal study sort of thing. I thought I can't go and do A levels because I was just getting so sick with like the exam stress. And then I was thinking about like teaching, all the practical things, and like again, me being so much like my mum, she always was, and I think she did a night course when I was a kid, doing psychology. And she always liked the true crime documentaries and stuff like that. And that bit of influence, I thought, maybe I can go into kind of like public services in some way. And I was starting to look at maybe being in the police and things like that, because I still had this voice like, oh, well, they look for black women, they're looking for ethnicities, it'd be easy sort of thing. So I ended up doing a public services course, and it just meant it teaches you more about emergency services like fire, police, military, things like that, prison service, because that was another one I thought, oh, maybe I'll go and be like a prison officer or something like that. And I enjoyed it. It was good, because I thought, it was nice to kind of do something that felt like, well, maybe you could like achieve something from this. And they taught you so many different things about like kind of health and safety and first aid and health and fitness and stuff, like teaching you kind of skills to if you are to work in those areas, that will kind of like help you and support you throughout that. So yeah, it was like I did it as a kind of anti-A level thing, but I ended up actually really enjoying it. And then it was like end of those 2 years, and I never thought I was going to go to uni. I was just like, I'd finish this and I'm going to get a job. I just want to work. That's all I ever wanted to do. And then my tutor, who was really nice actually, she was like, I think you've got like so much potential. Like, I think you'd be really good at university. And I was like, me? Because I was like, I do not do exams or anything like that. I'm not very academic. But she just, I don't know, it was kind of nice to hear someone say positive things. I thought like they really believed that I've got something else. Especially because in my family as well, no one had gone to uni or anything like that. So it wasn't something that was kind of expected or enforced in any way. So I just didn't think about it. And then I started talking to her about what she did. And I thought, oh, that sounds really interesting. And it was quite a new course at the time. And it was forensic psychology, which now is just like standard. But like nearly 15 years ago, it was a bit new. So obviously it's predominantly a psychology degree, but it's looking at the aspects of criminology with that. So thinking about, criminal behaviour, how mental illness can come into that as well. Looking at how different systems, whether that be prison or police, kind of work around that. And it was very much like this idea that, you could, well, it's either there's kind of two aspects to it. You can go into further research which looks at those different areas, looking at criminal behaviour, personality types, things like that, or you can go into looking at becoming a psychologist, becoming a psychologist, fully qualified yourself, or you might go off into kind of some kind of therapy, or there's different aspects. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. Like, I like the idea. And it's something she said that I thought, no, didn't think anyone really noticed that. But she said, you're always very observational, and you have a good way of speaking to people, and explaining things, and analysing things. So she just thought I had the mindset for it. And like I said, it wasn't interest, but never thought it was going to be like, it could be a career, if that makes sense. I used to like watching CSI or true crime documentaries, but it never thought it was a thing.
You've told me that like your way of relaxing is listening to true crime podcasts.
Yeah, like I listened to hours of it as well, hours of it. I still do now, not as much. I've expanded like my podcast, because sometimes you just need a bit of lightness, especially over the last 18 months. You want it a bit lighter, but yeah, I'm obsessed with true crime. I can listen to hours of it. And I just find like people fascinating, just like what they, like the worst things and the best things that they can do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. And I think you see a lot as well. The more anxious a person can be, just the more interested in true crime they are. Because I think it's more about, if you feel like you know everything there is to know about it, it makes you feel a bit more like in control. I don't know what it is, but it's just a very weird relationship between anxious people in true crime, because and that's only something I've learned like in the last few years, but at the time I just thought, oh, it's just something I like. But I think it was just it's definitely a bit of anxiety into that.
That's really interesting because John listens to documentaries as he goes to sleep, and he like at the moment he's listening to like Nazi crime documentaries as he drifts off at night.
Oh my gosh.
And then he tells me that over breakfast the next morning. He tells me all these just horrific, awful stories. It's like, why are you choosing to listen to this as you go to sleep?
I know, it doesn't sound healthy at all, does it, when you think about it?
Really not. It's like, I can kind of understand the fascination, but choose your moment. You know?
Yeah, exactly. But so this was like another time that education kind of had an effect and like influence directly on what I did, because I thought I'll apply, because I thought I'll apply to uni, because why not, see what happens, because I just didn't think I'd get in, because I thought I'm not academic. I just kept telling myself that, so I was like, I'm not going to get in anyway. And then I got into like all the courses, all the unis I applied, and I thought, oh my god, maybe this is a thing, like maybe I can do it. I know, so I was just really surprised.
Yeah.
And so I think I was so shocked by that. I thought, I have to do this now, because especially at the time, it was very much like, this is an opportunity everyone gets, especially if you come from like a low income or anything like that, or disadvantaged area, or any however they wanted to describe it. So I was like, well, I've got to do it. And then I went to Leeds Uni. It was completely new experience, but it was kind of nice. I thought, I get to live somewhere different. It would be nice to kind of have some independence in that way. And it was great. It's like, I mean, I still struggled with it, because like I said, I just didn't feel like that kind of study research element of me was very natural. It was a lot of effort. I had to make so much effort to get myself just to do the basics. But I made such like great friends and great connections, people I'm still friends with now. And like, you just learn so many things, and I really do feel like I've always been a bit of an old soul, but I always felt like I really grew up in uni and having that time away. So that was nice, and I kind of did that and had this whole bubble of like, well, this is what I'm going to do now, this is my path, sort of thing. But then I always still felt like something was missing, and you would see that by the way I would just kind of put myself into like everything else that I did. So like, I don't know if it's normal for students to kind of have dinner parties rather than just parties, but I would be like, I'm cooking Christmas dinner, and I cooked Christmas dinner for like 15 people. I was decorating. I was like, decorating the room. I was doing, we're doing themes. Oh yeah, in our halls. And this was kind of very influenced by my good friend Danny as well. Who's he's Spanish, he's from Gran Canaria, but his influence as well, because he's just like such a kind of like fun, creative person as well. It was like, oh shit, it was never just like a simple thing. Like if we were having we decided in our halls that we were going to have a carnival, and it was it wasn't just like, oh, have a few people around, have drinks. We made everyone get dressed up, we decorated the place, we made decorated those, and like I was always like finding ways to kind of let out this like creative side of me. Like nothing could just be simple. I always had to be a bit extra with everything that I did. And I think it was that idea of like making something feel like an experience, like having this atmosphere, and like I'm obsessed with doing that. Again, like these things, it's now when I'm talking about it, I realise how much that is the point of why I do these things. But so like, and then so I had my little kind of buddy then, really, to kind of always do these, like have this outlet of ways to be creative and have these kind of moments of being able to do my own thing.
Because that brings me back to what you were saying earlier about like how you're always really fascinated by sets, and and that's an experience, like going through, moving through those spaces, and it sounds like that's something that you were then channeling into your parties and dinner parties, and like you said, like creating an atmosphere and experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I realised at the time, but it's obviously why. Graduating uni,
Mm-hmm.
Again, just thinking, well, I need to get a job now, because I'm thinking I've done 3 years, I did a horrible dissertation, you know, I had to do all this today. I need to have a job that proves that like it was worth me going to uni, because
Yeah.
already by the kind of end of it, I was kind of a bit like, it was good, it was interesting, but I don't know if it's really for me. I can't imagine myself, like, I knew by that point I definitely didn't want to be a psychologist.
Right.
I thought of other areas that I might be able to go into. I was really interested in mental health, like that was the area that kind of spoke to me most, and I found like most important. But yeah, it was kind of like, what do I do now? But I managed to get a job back home in Leicester, working in forensic mental health as a support worker.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically means it's where if people have been like incarcerated under the Mental Health Act, so it could be for a criminal offence, but it's under the Mental Health Act, so they need it's like a secure unit, mental health unit.
Okay.
So I got that job at like 21. Right, this is what I do now. So you can see how I'm all over the place. I've got very two like literally contrasting kind of personalities in terms of like what I want to be doing, like, and trying to look at doing, but also what I end up doing, which is like the kind of sensible route. And this has just been the theme for like the last, you know, how many years. So I ended up getting that job, and I was there for like 3 or 4 years. Again, I learned so much in that role, so much applied stuff from like doing my studies, but also just about myself, what I was capable of,
Mm-hmm.
like the things I had to deal with, that I couldn't believe that I could manage, like having to respond to very difficult, challenging incidences.
Mm-hmm.
I worked on a women's ward, so we'll see a lot of self-harm and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But all those things that at first was like, wow, I can't believe I can deal with this, then became like the stuff that kind of burnt me out, because it was like became too normal for me.
Yeah.
To kind of deal with these really traumatic experiences. And I was just like, I don't think I can do this anymore. I thought, I don't want it to be normal for me to have to take ligatures off people's necks and be like, oh, it's just another day at work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a bit much. And I think I realised more now, but at the time, I was definitely struggling with my own mental health.
Well, I was going to say this. Did you get any support? Was there any offered to you?
They had everything clinical support based that you needed, in terms of if there was incidences, you'd have debriefs, you'd talk to your staff, you'd talk to your team. You know, they had very good ways of like kind of responding to incidents.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously there is an element of, this is the nature of the job, so there's only so far they can take it. So it was me kind of finding my own support as well, and finding actually getting help after I realised that I needed it.
Yeah, yeah, because you were really young as well. So what, 21,
Yeah.
22, 23?
Yeah, so it's 21 to like 24-ish I worked there. But I realised now I had such bad anxiety, and a lot of it was kind of, it was just not helped by work. It wasn't necessarily caused by it, but obviously it didn't help. I couldn't like walk down the street without imagining like catastrophizing everything, imagine terrible things happening.
Yeah.
Which is quite common when you've got like really severe anxiety. And then I was starting to have panic attacks, which isn't something I'd experienced before.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like horrendous. And I was working so many hours because I was just thought, if I work, I don't have to sit at home thinking about things that I'm sad about.
Yeah.
And I started saving money, and I thought, what am I doing with this money? I moved out to live on my own, and I liked having all my you know, I was renting all these kind of quirky places. I could never just get a normal standard flat. I always had to get something a bit awkward. So I had some really fun places that I lived in, but then it was a bit like, and I was using a bit of my creativity in those spaces. I was making things, I was collecting things. I was obsessed with collecting like vintage and retro homeware, which some of it I've still got, but I started to kind of sell and get rid of a lot. But that was kind of like when my obsession with like vintage stuff kind of became a thing.
Yeah.
And so I saved all this money, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, I don't know if I can do this job anymore. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I was like, I need some space. So I decided to quit and go to Mexico, which sounds really glamorous, but it didn't feel glamorous at the time. It just felt like I needed to do something extreme, or I didn't know what I was going to do myself. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, so I went to Mexico City. I landed there, and I was like, right, I've got like 5 days to myself before I do this tour. And it's like the most bizarre thing I've ever done. But I just like loved everything about it, because it just stopped me, like, I don't know, it automatically had to stop me being in all those thoughts, because I thought, now you have to think about where you're going to stay, you have to do this, you have to meet people because you don't know the language, you have to learn the language, you have to do all these things.
That's so interesting that you chose to, in a way, put yourself in a position of discomfort it's such an extreme distraction that, you're experiencing anxiety, high levels of anxiety. So you take yourself to the other side of the world where they speak a different language.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was more like, but I don't. It's silly, because I always felt guilty for like my mental health issues. Like, obviously, I understand more about it now.
Yeah.
But at the time, even though I knew, oh, go and get help for this, I didn't think. I still thought it was a bit of like a kind of selfish thing to be indulgent, worrying about stuff that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You don't realise that is part of the problem, and that is why it is illness, because it is your body reacting to things that might not necessarily happen, but you can't help it.
Yeah.
But at the time, I just thought, oh my god, you need to get over yourself, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? I was quite cruel about it.
Yeah. I know.
So that's why I think I put myself into that position, because it was kind of like, well, if things do go wrong, at least you'll have something actually to moan about. I think it was that kind of mentality.
Okay.
I know it sounds really cruel now, but I think that's just how I felt. I felt a bit guilty about everything. Because I was like, well, I've got a good, sensible job. I'm doing well at it. I've got my, renting, but I've got my own space. I physically have a house, a roof over my head. I've got money. It's like, why are you like, being all mopey and upset? And that's just how I felt. So I thought, I'm going to go and do something different and just have some space. And yes, I went just for like a couple of months, but because that's like kind of all I could afford, really. But it made all the difference. Like, I felt like literally like a weight had been lifted, and realised that I don't have to be so harsh on myself. I think it made me realise that you're not stuck. I had this fear of being stuck, and then I thought, well, you don't have to be. You can actually change things.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to learn when it comes to jobs and careers, whether that be creative or not, because I think you so get the fear like you have to stay in one place, because like you might be on the right path, so don't come off it. And I know not everyone will always have that ability or feel like they have that ability, but I think it was really important for me at the time to know that I didn't have to be here. And I could have changed.
Yeah.
So and poor people, like I met some amazing people when I was traveling, but I definitely realised that I completely used it as like therapy. So the amount I offloaded onto these poor people that I was travelling with. And I'm sure they would never say a bad thing about me, because we all had a good time. But you think back and you thought, oh my god, the amounts of like rants and tears and stuff that came out over the like nights. And I remember saying to people, like literally crying probably in a pool, drinking cocktails, and be like, all I want to do is just be able to do nice things and make things look nice and make It's so silly when you think about it, but I remember actually doing this and being like, oh, well, I think I want to do events, and because that was something that kind of like became like identified to me, like maybe what I want to do is like be setting up like kind of like pop-up events and like experiences and like things like that. So it's like I was literally crying, like I just think I want to do events and things like that. I don't want to work in like care anymore. Yeah. So after coming home, I thought, right, let's think how we can do this, because it's so hard, like especially if it's a creative job that you can't always get employed for. and you might have to go straight into being self-employed and doing your own thing. It's really scary. You're like, how do you just do it?
Yeah, because like unless you've got like a huge amount of investment behind you, or or maybe you come from a family who already does it, or
Yeah.
you get an internship, it's a kind of like, it's like, well, what is that? Oh, I've just decided I'm going to start doing events, and you should all come along.
Yeah.
Like
It
on
was just,
what basis?
yeah, on what basis? Like how do you get that kind of, like you said, how do you kind of get that kind of support for it? And
Yeah.
like it was just so my mind was like absolutely blown. And what I had done, so I come back and I think I was still on bank, which meant like I had a little bit of money, but where I did have to go like straight back to into work because I'd saved. But I also was on bank, so that meant for NHS I can go and do the odd shift if I really needed to. I was like trying to avoid that as much as possible. I think I got back and there was a course. There was like a women in business course, they called it at the time. And it was just all perfect timing. I thought it might give me a bit of confidence about like how to start your own. And I did that, and it was really, really good actually. And I learned so much about just like the kind of the practical stuff and things around tax and like, and also kind of the expectations from business. And this was like people running any kind of business, so it didn't matter. There's people doing being accountants, there was caterers, there was all sorts of different businesses, but we're all kind of just learning the basics. And it was really good because what they did is you did this like 6-day course. I think it was over like a month. It might have been 8 days. It was like 2 days a week for like a month. And then you got a mentor after, like a business mentor, and which was an amazing opportunity. But I didn't take it. Well, I say I don't think, I know for a fact I didn't take enough advantage of it, because I went to the first couple of meetings and I got so overwhelmed with like my ideas and what I wanted to do and if it would work or not. And then I was just like, and how I back it all up, and all this stuff kind of like flooded out.
Yeah.
And I was just basically like, I don't think I could do this kind of thing to his mentor. And she was like, this happens. This is like, Cherelle, you're not the first person to think like this. This happens all the time. I was just literally just like crying all the way through her sessions. And another person I felt really sorry for. Because when I'm just frustrated or I can't express anything, my go-to is just tears. I don't have any other way to like kind of deal with things. She said, the only concern I have, Cherelle, is that I think you're afraid of taking yourself seriously.
Right.
And I was like, oh, and it really got to me. And then obviously there's more tears. And you know what? I still think it is the same now, because like I just go through, like my friends and family would tell you, like, and you could tell me, because even in the short space of time we've been talking, you've heard probably like a million ideas from me, and all these things that I want to do, and all these ideas that I have, but I never push forward because I'm always just. It is about being a bit afraid, and it's like I'm not sure if I'm afraid more of like how seriously other people take me, or if it's just about me taking myself seriously. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what it is. It's probably a bit of both, and a whole combination of everything. But I just feel like it's like that bit of embarrassment again about taking yourself seriously about something you actually like to do rather than just want to do. Do you know what I mean?
Do you think there's like a fear that if you start kind of taking yourself seriously and going, yeah, this is what I'm going to do, that people are going to think, who does she think she is? Like, because I think that's
definitely it has to be.
Yeah, because otherwise, it must just be fear of what others might think, or that they might find it funny because you know what it is. I think it's also because it means so much to you. And so as soon as you kind of vocalize that and say, right, I'm going to do this, then you're leaving yourself really exposed and raw.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of fear, because I can definitely relate to that. And I think it's taken me like the same, like a whole lifetime to kind of say, oh, well, this is what I do and this is what I love. And then it's really, really scary because, anyone can turn around and say, or God forbid, just think it, that, that I don't deserve to take it seriously because I'm not good enough at it. You know? So I can really understand that. It's it's vulnerable. It's really vulnerable.
Really vulnerable. And this is like, what, we're talking 7 years ago now. So
Yeah.
at the time I thought, yeah, you're right, I don't take myself seriously. So I thought the most serious thing I can do as a start is at least register my own business. So
Okay.
I created my business, I registered I registered it because what I'd been asked for at the time kind of it all just came together. I wasn't looking for it, but one of my good school friends, her mum was getting married, and she noticed that I was like collecting a lot of, like, I would put it all over my Facebook, and I started a blog at the time when I tried to blog, but I didn't have much momentum for it. I'd love to find it now because I don't even know if it would be archived anywhere. But I started a blog because I was obsessed with collecting like vintage things, and it was very much like the kind of vintage teaware and stuff like that at the time. And I loved mid-century like furniture and things like that. So I used to just ramble on about stuff I collected in charity shops every week, pretty much. And she noticed that and was like, "Oh, she wants to have a vintage tea party style wedding, and like to use all the vintage wear that I got, but also cater it." So it became a combination of two things I absolutely love, which is like all the vintage crap that I hoard, but also being able to have food and display it in a nice way and make it all look pretty. And she was just like, "Oh yeah, it'd be nice to use the kind of like the teacups and sauces." And I was like, "Oh yeah, definitely." So I registered and I thought, this is it. This is like me trying to take myself seriously because I'm actually doing it for someone. I'm not just telling people, "Oh, I'm going to do this," but then you've not actually got any work. So yeah, so I did that, and it was so nice. And what she came, like they like the food and they're happy with how everything went. What they really liked is like she was like, "Oh, I really liked how I think it was just the area where people had to do like the guest book and things like that." And she's like, "Oh, I really like how you did the thing with the teapot and the frame and like the jewelry." So what I'd done is like had like the book there. It's something like people do now without even thinking about it. So at the time for her, it was so new. It's like that I've actually stylized the area that it was, so that I used like a vintage teapot and I had like pearls draped over it and things like that. Now I'd look at it, I'd be like, "Oh, I so wouldn't do that anymore." But at the time I was like so proud of it, and I did it for me really because I just enjoy those little moments. But it was nice that someone else actually acknowledged it.
Yeah.
And I thought, "Oh, I think I could do it." And I was like, I can actually, even though I was already doing it, I was like, I think I can actually do this sort of thing. It was one of those moments. And then I kind of started doing more just by, it's kind of like, family, friends, word of mouth, and just doing little bits. I never really, but the bit where I say didn't take myself seriously enough is like, I didn't really push it. I never really like thought I'm going to invest time and money into like advertising and promoting. I'd always allow it to be a bit of a whisper and someone just to come up and say, "Oh, can you do my birthday party?" or "Could you do my wedding?" and things like that. And I think that was again me, just that bit of fear. Like if I put an advert somewhere, I'm going to be taking myself far too seriously. If I put an advert in the paper, or if I put stuff all over Facebook, it's so silly now because like who wouldn't do those things for their own business? But I just felt, I felt really like silly about it. I had a bit of embarrassment. It was so silly.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I totally get it because again, it's that thing of like, well, if you properly advertise, what if you don't get any customers?
Yeah, exactly. And then if you do it and then you don't get anything, that's really embarrassing.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas like if it's just like, oh, word of mouth, it's like, oh, well, it's kind of just something that I do on the side, and nobody really knows about it. But it's like, I think then there's the expectation of, well, I'm now advertising, so you're kind of like waiting there with your stall out, for people to.
Yeah, exactly. And what I'd done, so after like probably 3 or 4 months, so October, November, I actually got a part-time job. So it kind of took the pressure off, like, I don't have to go full throttle because I will have enough money just to keep me going.
Yeah.
So this was more me doing it to kind of build up my business. But then I suppose in a way it was allowing myself to not be like taking it that seriously, because I thought I don't need it to get money. I'm doing it because I want to do it. Do you know what I mean? Which it's a nice like place to be in, but also I know practically, because if I'm thinking like, oh, this is what I want to do for a career, I need to put more into it than that. But I never did that, and that's kind of what I did for like the next like 5 years. I always did things. It kind of developed and grew, because I ended up doing more of the baking became popular, and I ended up doing wedding cakes, because at the time naked cakes became a thing. People just wanted it decorated in fruit and flowers, and wanted really nice tasting cakes, but not all the like icing and everything. So I ended up doing that, and that became a thing, and then that became a word of mouth. Like, oh, well, Cherelle did this cake for me, and did that cake, and the next thing you know, it was like, 5 years later, and I'm still doing a bit of a part-time job, and I was like, what am I actually doing with this? And it's sort of like, even though I appreciated every job that I had, it started becoming less of what I was trying to deliver in the first place. It became less about like all my vintage wear obsessions. Became less about the styling, and I ended up just being a baker. I thought, well, this is not like, this is nice, but it's not like really what I wanted to do. So then I kind of stepped back from like having my own business, and I just ended up working for a couple of years. And this is kind of where we're at now, and kind of what I've been talking to you about recently. It's just like, well, what am I doing? Like, I had my 30th, so I'm 32 now. Had my 30th birthday a couple of years ago, and I was like, it wasn't a dramatic thing for me, because everyone was like, oh, how do you feel? And I was like, really, I had my kind of bit of a breakdown and everything at like 24 when I went to Mexico. So I just wanted to be doing more of what I want to do, and stop saying yes to things that I don't actually want to do. So that's more what my 30th was about. And I thought, actually, I've got at least another 35 years that I've got to work in this, according to this government as well. I was like, what am I going to do with this time? Like, is this the job I actually want to be doing, or do I want to say I at least try to do what I really wanted? And even if it only lasts for like 5 years of that 35, at least I've done it. So that's kind of what's been playing on my mind. And then obviously, and over the last year, so the year after I turned 30, so this is 2019, I spent so much time thinking, right, I want to have a cafe. That's one of the things I've always wanted to do. Kind of nostalgic to my work experience, and like I just love the whole thing, love running it, and like the community, like your regulars, like giving different experiences. I thought one of the things I've always wanted to do is a cafe, so I'm going to do that. Started looking at options, started looking at local places, which, looking for this area is a bit more affordable to kind of, as a startup business, just have a little small town cafe and just do my own thing. And then I got a partner, so like a family friend who's also interested in that kind of change in her life and wanted to do the same thing. I thought, this is great. So, we get on, we have similar ideas, as like, and it gives you a bit of support there for doing something like a new venture, especially when it is brick and mortar premises. It's a lot more pressure than doing like say we were looking at doing like food markets and things like that, which kind of is an easier access. But I thought my dream is the cafe. So we were so close, so close, literally like at the point of doing credit checks to see if they would let us have a lease. And then lockdown hit. So could you imagine, like, I thought I finally kind of given myself a bit of confidence to say, we're going to do it, I'm going to take myself seriously. And then it was like, I'm sure this has happened to thousands of people last year.
Crushing.
So it was a lot. And then I thought, oh my God, I'm just becoming, and it's like, my poor friends, like, they hear me go on about things I want to do all the time, and they're always like, Cherelle, just bloody do it, because you could do it. And again, it's just like, it's not happened. And I always laugh, because my mum always said, like, when I was younger, she'd always ask me to do things, and I would always say I was gonna do it, I was gonna do this. And I thought that is so like my catchphrase. I always have these things, and it's like, oh, I was gonna do it. And I thought that is just me through because I really was gonna do it, but I just never got a chance to do it. And I thought I can't have the rest of my life be I was gonna.
Oh
So
God.
I thought, so this is kind of where we've got to now. So
Yeah.
even though, like I said, a very choppy, all over the place kind of journey with my kind of creative and food side, but I know I still, even despite how difficult it's been over the last year, I
Yeah.
thought I was getting really settled into my part-time job that I do work. I was a volunteer coordinator for a charity, and I thought, I hate to do that. Oh, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? But I thought, no, actually, I do need to do that. And it wasn't that role. So I know what I want to do is like creative and food and things like that. And I thought, if what you were about to do was to start a cafe, what I need to be doing, even if that means I need to have employed work at the time,
Yeah.
is to still be related. So I'm
Yeah.
like making sure I've got as much knowledge and as much experience as I can.
Yeah.
And to be able to, like, if I need to go it alone, like say without a partner, that I can go in and be able to confidently make a business application and know all the information I need, have the experience to back it up and things like that. So a couple of months ago, I thought I need to stop like applying for the jobs similar to what I was doing. I need to actually apply for jobs in food and in creative opportunities. Like, I managed to get a cook job locally, which is great because it means I don't have to commute into Manchester anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a lead cook in a kitchen. I get to create menus. I'm doing orders. I'm doing working with kitchen assistants and stuff. So it's really good experience.
Yeah.
It's nice to have a job that I go in and I do it and I don't have to think about it when I get home. Whereas my other job was becoming a bit more like, it kept me up at night, and I thought it shouldn't be like that. And it doesn't have to be like that, but I think it just wasn't the right role for me anymore. But I thought I just love kind of like working with food again and being on my feet and talking to people, and it's nice to have that change. And I feel like I've done the healthy thing for me, which is not be afraid, like not having that fear of being stuck again, and just like allowing the change to happen. Because when I've been telling people like, oh, I've got this new job and now I'm a cook and I do this, and then they're a bit like, oh, okay. Because it's like, I think people expect you when you're making career changes, especially when you're in your 30s, they expect it to be a massive big promotion or
It's interesting, isn't it, how we assign status to different jobs and assign them to different stages in our life. It's like, the job that you're doing is equally as valuable, and if not more valuable, because it's feeding into a plan that you have.
where I'm gonna go, what I want to do. But it's hard for other people to see that. So, and like technically I'm getting paid less than my previous job, but now I'm full time and I don't have to drive hundreds of miles every week. So I'm actually better off, but those things don't matter really, because it is about, like I said, it is about it feeding into what I really want to do, the creative aspects, and also working with food. But it can be hard to explain that to people, because it's very much, I think, especially when you're in your 30s, it's very much about progression and getting to a good place, that getting to that whether that be manager or whatever it is, get into a certain area, get into a certain status, and just maintaining that into retirement. But that's not what I'm going for. I want to be able to explore my notebook full of creative and different business ideas that I have. And I thought, if I don't put myself in a different situation where I'm going to actually get some of the experience that I need to give myself more confidence, really, not just like the potential person giving me a business loan maybe, but it's also giving myself confidence, say like, actually I can do this. And when people question it, I won't be like in an hour, and I'll be saying like, no, I know what I can do, and I know this is what I want to do. Because I think that is part of the problem. Like you said earlier about, people might not even say it. It might be just the thought of people thinking it is enough to kind of worry you, and that is what I allow to like take over sometimes. So I know I do a lot of these things for myself and give myself a bit more confidence, but there's so many things that filter into that, because it's also like conversations over the last few years, especially because we are child free, and child free by choice. It's one of those things that I was like, you know, for years you say, oh, not yet, but maybe later, but we don't think we probably won't ever have children, and it can be a hard thing to say out loud, because a lot of people will be like, well, why? And I had a really difficult conversation with someone, well, difficult for me, it wasn't difficult where they were a bit like, well, what are you doing? Because like, I thought if you're not having kids, it's because you're doing something, like basically like you're doing something with your life. And I was like, am I not just allowed to live? Like, I felt like all this pressure that I have to be doing more. And it really got to me. And that was like that was during the time I started thinking about like, oh, I'm going to do this cafe thing. And I think that's what motivated it and drove it a bit more, because I was like, I'm going to show you that I'm doing something.
Yeah. Oh my God, there's so much judgment in that.
There's so much. But it's like, I don't think they meant it. They genuinely didn't think they were being judged. They just thought it's like, well, I understand if people have kids, maybe your career things will go out the window a bit. So if you haven't got kids, why isn't your career like exactly where you want it? Do you know what I mean? I genuinely think I'm at a place now, though, where I'm making these changes and do these things because it is what I want to do, and I know I have to do what's right for me. But ideally, I will like be able to have my my own business in a couple of years. I've never just wanted to be like a kind of a coffee and breakfast kind of place. When I say cafe, I just say that as like the format of, that's what the building typically is. We've always liked the idea. This comes back, I've just realised this links all back to like the experiences and stuff like that. But we've always liked the idea of doing, essentially, I want to be able to invite people around to my cafe to have dinner parties. So I think you call it like a supper club.
I was going to say, like a supper club. Because that's what I always come back to when I think of you. Because when like, you know, you're often sending me links to like to cafes or houses and like, you know, photos that have inspired you, and that's very much kind of, it's not just about the food, it's the whole experience, it's the all the senses, it's the light, it's the, you know, the visual aspect of being in an inspiring space, and then accompanied by the food, which then, you know, goes back to the carnival that you were throwing in your halls of residence, you know, parties, and creating a set. It's kind of like secret cinema but with food, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's what I'd love to kind of be able to create, and that's what we're kind of working towards. And my partner's really into music, and he collects vinyl and stuff like that, and I think he wants to be able to bring an element of like, you know, setting the mood, you know, with that. And I just think it is more like a kind of like a supper club, like dinner party thing, more than I say a cafe. And I think that's spot on. And it is, 'cause I don't know why, I've always been more than just what's presented. I always like creating, like I've always been extra, basically. I've always wanted to have more to the situation than it actually is. So yeah, that's what we're working towards, because that's just always been like a dream business, like for us.
It sounds like the perfect fit. It feels like everything that you're saying and everything that you're doing, and the way that you're creating and you're doing up your house, and the messages that you're putting out and the stuff that you're sending to me, like it is all feeding into what I see as a really clear vision. You know, it's just that there's just, you know, it just takes a lot, sometimes a few different paths to get there, and a few different attempts, and you know, and it's not like, because I was talking to somebody else about this on a conversation earlier this week, and we were talking about how you know, through films and through movies in a way, you're kind of led to believe that you make a change and it's a life-changing event, and then that's how everything changes direction, and that's it. But it's like, actually, you kind of make lots of little different changes, and some of them work out more and some of them work out less, but they're all part of the design to a kind of a broader scheme, like the broader plan is,
Absolutely.
it's not like anything really fails. It's just kind of different steps to get there, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's just, yeah, and it's just some things move on, and then some, yeah, it is loads of little, especially for me, it has been loads of little different things that I've done and experienced and learned, and you know what I mean, I've just done over the years. It's not been always, I suppose, like, for, like, me getting this new job is the most drastic thing I've done, really.
Mhm.
It's not, and that's not even drastic. It's just another way to kind of turn, like, pivot a bit
Yeah,
towards where I want to be.
yeah.
Um, because, yeah, for some people having to make that change into creative, it might have to be something completely drastic, like, um, completely taking away that security of a previous job, having to go self-employed straight away,
Yeah.
having to, it could be completely different, and there's a lot of pressure with that, and that might be the right way to drive that creative journey. But yeah, for me, it's definitely been loads of little steps, and I think that's partly because of just being sure of myself and what I want and what I want
Mhm.
to do, and getting older and starting to listen less and less to people like
Yes.
that teacher in school,
Yeah.
and people telling me, like, is it careers or babies or what are you
Yeah.
doing? And it's just yeah, getting a bit more confidence for myself and thinking, like, no, I'm sure of it. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm working towards.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be hard, but
Yeah.
I just have to do it because I was like, hopefully, well, I have a long life, and if I do, I've got a lot of work to do. I've got a lot of
Yeah.
years of work in it, so
Yeah.
I need to be doing something I want to do. I know it sounds very cheesy to say that because people do say it, but it's so true. I've seen so many people close to me working for ages in certain areas, thinking, well, this is a safe, secure job. It's going to get me to where I want to be
Yeah.
financially, security wise, not necessarily what they personally want to do.
Yeah.
So they've put all that effort for 30, 40 years into that, and then they're not actually getting rewarded the way they thought they would.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't want to do that. So I might as well, if I'm going to put that effort in, I might as well do it into the things I actually will enjoy doing at the time.
Yeah.
Even if financially it doesn't reflect the same as some of the career paths.
Mm.
But
That
yeah.
fills me with so much happiness to hear, honestly. Really, I love it. I think because we've had so many conversations over the last couple of years, and I've known and felt how disheartened you felt, and kind of, to keep that momentum going, and have those dreams, and not just dreams, but like plans, like quite solid plans, but
Mm.
to feel like you're not getting anywhere, and to just find the energy to keep going. It's so gorgeous to hear you so clear and so confident, and yeah, with such a, I don't know, just so assertive. I think it's great.
Well, thank you. Oh, I'm glad it's come across like that as well. Sometimes it feels like I'm still just rambling and all over the place in my head, but
No,
I'm,
it's
I'm
actually,
glad it sounds different.
yeah, no, it's not rambling at all. And I think what's really lovely is that I see, like I was saying, like, I see your plan so clearly, and I see like what you're interested in, what it is that you want to do, just so clearly for you. And it's really great to hear like the way that you've just explained everything and tied everything in. It just makes so much sense. There's absolutely no reason for you to not take yourself seriously, as if there's ever any reason. You can take yourself
Yeah.
seriously for whatever, but like it feels really solid. So, and I'm not saying that you should listen to me, because like you've just said, listen to nobody, just do what you want to do. But from my for where I'm sitting, that's how it comes across, really.
No, I'm glad. I really appreciate that.
No, really do. And I'm so, thank you. I just really thank you so much that you've given up, your morning to talk to me about this. It's so valuable, and I feel like I've come, like we've had an hour and a half of talking about, and I've come away with so much to think about, and just like energy. It's really inspired me to take some of that on as well. Um, some of that confidence, and because we all waver at points, don't we?
Oh, definitely. I think that's just part of I just think it's part of that kind of creative I don't know. I think it becomes like a mindset really, but
Yeah.
there's always going to be a bit of a wobble there. But it's just having things that will give you a bit of reassurance and comfort that you're doing the right thing,
Yeah.
which can be hard to find. But
yeah,
we all need those things to keep us going, really.
definitely. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much. So for the sake of the listeners, where can people find you online, Cherelle? I'll also include it in the show notes, but just to hear from you.
It's really on Instagram mainly that you'll see me doing all sorts. So,
All
like I
sorts.
said, literally all sorts. So it's like I said, we've ended up with a bit of an accidental renovation. We thought we'd just be coming in and I'll make it all look nice and feel nice, but ended up being a lot more work. So there's that, and obviously I'm obsessed with my allotment at the moment because I like being outdoors as much as possible. So at the Joy of Staying In is my Instagram, and it will just have everything about kind of my home and everything I'm up to on there. Actually thinking about that kind of another thing that ties in, because some people were like, oh, that's a really funny name, like thinking I came up with it during like Corona and COVID. I've had that account for nearly 3 years.
Yeah, because I found you pre-Corona, and one of the things that attracted me was the names. I thought, oh, that's quite clever.
And you know why I came up with it? Because it's all ties in. It's obviously been a clear theme in my life that I'm only just realizing now. But it was me trying to, what I originally thought I'd be doing, like once we've had our house and settled in, is exploring ways to kind of make more of the little moments at home, which you are very good at doing naturally, like the way you kind of just like lay out your table. I think looks like a beautiful feast, and you're all, it's simple breakfast or it's a simple lunch, but you're making the most of it. And that is kind of like what the Joy of Staying In was ideally going to be about, but it's now become more about renovations and everything like that. But it was just kind of like making the most of the little things at home, because I'm very much a homebody. Like I just love being in my own space.
Which then kind of that makes sense of supper clubs, doesn't it? Because the supper clubs are very
exactly.
intimate.
I just realised that now. But it's just like not feeling guilty about that, because I think there was at the time was more and more about like getting out and doing things and having these experiences. But it's like you can have those experiences at home with your on your own, with your partner, with your family, whoever you want to bring around as guests. So it was kind of going to be exploring that a bit more, which I think it will develop as things kind of settle down and my house becomes less hectic, because I'm still very passionate about that, and that's why I love following accounts like yours, because it always looks, you just make those little moments look like something to really celebrate.
Got to find it where you can. Absolutely.
Exactly, definitely.
Oh, well, I have loved talking to you. This is like our first date.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And thank you for having me on. It's lovely to do. Like I never thought I'd be a podcast guest, but it's really brilliant opportunity. And again, it's like almost therapeutic, because I just get a chance to like say everything out loud and think, actually, you have really reflected on that and acknowledged things, and you've grown. It's nice to have that moment to say it out loud. So I really appreciate that and appreciate your time.
Oh, pleasure, absolute pleasure.
You can find Cherelle on Instagram at The Joy of Staying In, where she shares her house renovation, her home styling, and the allotment progress. I will include the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening to On the Irregular. Please make sure you review and subscribe, as it helps other listeners find us.